Hello and welcome back to Silica Valley. I'm Andy, and today I've got a real treat for me really. I've bought a new knife. I'm exceptionally excited about it. It arrived a couple of days ago and I've been dying to use it properly. I've played with it a little bit, but I wanted to save the full test for now. So my history with knives is that the first time I invested significant money in knives was to buy a set of Global knives. This is what they look like. I've got them on the wall over there. These Global knives have been great in one regard and a bit of a curse in another regard. And I did what a lot of people do, is I bought them blind really. I just ordered them online. I thought Global knives, it's got to be a winner, right? So that's not really the case for me personally. And what I've learned since buying these knives, and they were expensive, I think I spent about £500 on the full set, and I've added this one to that set since, which is another £80 or £90. What I've learned is that one size doesn't fit all when it comes to knives. Anyway, I've done it again because, this is the one that the new knife is replacing. I've done it again because I've been and bought Ricky's. Ricky runs a website called V RYKY, and he's had a really interesting journey on YouTube. I'll put the link below, but he wouldn't call himself a knife sharpening expert, but he is a knife sharpening expert. He started learning to sharpen things when he was doing competitive ice skating of some kind. I think it was speed trials. But anyway, I've been watching his knife sharpening tutorials, trying to learn how to get the best performance out of these knives. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to unbox this, but first I'm going to sharpen this. I'll do it fast forward so you don't have to hang around for it. All right, back in a second. I'd already selected the step. Here we go. Okay, I'd say that's ready now. The technique I was using there is more akin to stropping than sharpening. That's one of the things I learned from Ricky. In fact, I'll just talk about this knife for a moment. This knife is a G2 from Global. And this is the chef's knife. So this does most of the work. But it's been really, really uncomfortable for me. Just when you go to chop, I actually have developed calluses on the inside here, which might be normal, but it doesn't feel normal to me. It just feels unwieldy in the hand. And I bought this because it had this handle on it. And I thought that would be, nice and comfy. It turns out that's not the case, and the same handle applies. This is a more comfortable knife. This is the G80 from Global, more like a Santoku knife. And it's more comfortable, but it's not super comfortable. So when I first started sharpening knives with this one, I actually I was grinding the thing down all of the time. And I think the first time I used a whetstone, this was pre-soaked by the way, the first time I used a whetstone, I kind of tried to define a new edge for it because I was stupid and I didn't know what I was doing and hadn't paid attention properly. And I think it kind of ruined the edge a little bit. I must try and bring that back someday. So when I got this one, I approached things differently because what I'd learned from Ricky is that the aim is not necessarily to grind a new edge each time. The aim really is to improve the edge that's already there. And that's more akin to stropping than it is to sharpening as such. So what I do now is I follow his method of 10 strokes. There's a whole other thing about the angle, but I won't go into that now. But 10 strokes in that direction, 10 strokes in that direction, and then 9 strokes in that direction, 9 strokes in that direction, and basically count down all the way to 1, a few extra strokes on 1. And that's been a really good method for maintaining the factory edge on this particular knife. Okay, that's it. Let's unbox Ricky's knife. I'm very excited about this. So here's my old Global knife, which has been a good servant. It's getting a little bit of, the metal's becoming a little rust discoloured here for some reason. I think that's because occasionally it does get left lying around with water on it, so hopefully that'll come out over time. But there's that one. Shall we have a look at Ricky's knife? So look at this beautiful box here. That's fantastic, isn't it? He's really gone to some trouble there. I think that looks fantastic. So it's the Riky Launch Edition. That's one side. Now I've already opened this, as I say, but that's what you get when you open the box. And there's little care instructions here. Very important. One of the key differences with this knife to this one is that it's made of a harder steel. It's less flexible. Let's just pull this out for you. So it comes in its own little sleeve. I'll just take that out, put that on there, get rid of that. And there you have it. The Riky Special Edition Cook's Knife. The full description is that it's the Tojiro Riky Edition VG10 Damascus 240mm Gyuto, sorry, is the chef's knife basically. The handle's made of teak, and this is black buffalo horn here. Obviously, I couldn't wait to open it when I got it through the post, so I had a look at it straight away. I'm no longer surprised at how beautiful this knife is, but it is absolutely stunning. I've already said this is the most expensive knife I've ever bought. Well, I don't care. It was £160, I think. This one was £80-ish on special offer. This one was significantly more, twice as much. You can spend as much as you want on a knife. The ones that one of the British chefs, James Martin, uses regularly on his show is £900, a £900 knife, which looks absolutely stunning also, and it's also a Damascus finish. This Damascus finish, I'll show you a close-up now. Basically what that is when they're folding and refolding the steel over and over again, it hardens the steel and it leaves this beautiful, beautiful pattern inside. So it says on the name here, Riky, 1 of 250 launch edition. It's not number 1 of 250. He's clear about that. There were 250 knives and like this, and this is one of them. The first thing I noticed out the box was how light it felt. It's not that the Global is heavy, but for example, the handle here, the way they balance the knife is that when they manufacture the Global is they fill the handle with sand. This looks like one piece of steel, but actually it's this part here and the handle are separate and they're joined together. But they fill the handle with sand to give it the right balance. Well, with this particular knife, the handle weighs nothing. All of the weight is in the steel, which is fantastic. And I'm able to catch it on the light as I look at it. It just looks amazing, and it feels really comfortable in my hand. I don't think I'm going to be getting any calluses using this knife. This handle is for me, much easier to hold than a more conventional handle like you'd see on this or some of the German knives. It's just absolutely fantastic. So let's cut some stuff, shall we? Now, why did I sharpen this? Well, I want to feel what the difference is between the Global and the new knife. It's quite a bit longer, actually, by the way, quite a bit longer. I want to feel the difference so I can convey that to you in this video. So we'll start, I've just sharpened it to the best of my current ability, and I can tell just by feeling it, it's not as sharp as Rykys. Rykys feels razor sharp. People often do a paper test with these knives, but I don't find that a very useful test. So I'm going to cut some stuff. Should we start small? Should we start with a chili? All right, so here we go. It slices through like butter, the Global. Look at that. Just straight through, no problem at all. So let's try and chop it a little smaller. How thin can we go, do you think? So that's pretty thin. So that's interesting. When we get to the end, it's kind of sliding off the skin a little bit. Okay, so the Global versus Ryky. So that was really, really simple going on the chili. So let's do the same thing with Ryky's knife. Let's get rid of that. Well, I mean, first of all, it's a lot longer. You can feel how much longer it is, but let's just, I mean, that is absolutely effortless. Let's see how thin we can get. I think if there is a difference between them for this particular vegetable, I think it's that Ryky's knife is more true. So when you start your cut, where you end up is roughly where you expect it to end up in terms of, like if I go really thin here, it'll maintain that thinness all the way through. It felt a little bit less accurate with the other one. I mean, obviously I've spent a lot of money on this, so I want to find the good in it, but yeah. So that's a chili. Let's put that to one side. Next, let's try should we try the tomato? So that feels fantastic. I'm just struggling a bit on the top. It's not quite making it through the skin on the top. And I can feel some resistance from the skin of the tomato. So let's put that to one side and try it with Ryky's knife. Oh, that is, oh my goodness. That's very different. That feels completely different to this knife. That is razor sharp. I couldn't tell as much on the chili, but something that has a little bit more of a delicate inner, but still has that peel on the outside. Let's see how thin I can go with this. Yeah, that's fantastic. In fact, I'm just going to chunk through this now, as though I was making some passata. Ow. Fuck. Look at that. That's fantastic. That is really, really super sharp. So sharp, I just stabbed myself. What should we try next? Cabbage or potato? Potato, you're on. Okay, on with the potato. I've put a Band-Aid on. Let's start with the Global. And even now, when I pick up the Global, I'm beginning to wish I had this in my hand instead. So we'll just halve this first. Okay, pretty effortless as you'd expect with Ryky's knife. Oh, it's just a very different feel. That feels fantastic. So I've got two halves. Let's make some small dice out of them. So I'm going to take my potato, just take some slices. Then chop along the length. And the challenge here is that once it's in smaller pieces, you see, this is where it gets a little bit dangerous. So once it's in these smaller pieces, how easily will the knife pass through it and the shape of the potato stay intact so I can continue slicing through it. The other thing I can't really do with this thing is find a comfortable place to put my finger. Sometimes it's there, sometimes I'm holding it there, sometimes I'm up here. There's no real consistency to it. Okay. Well, that's pretty easy. Just lost a little bit there, it pulled away. Alrighty, so yeah, that was fine, easy peasy. Now let's try it with Ricky's knife. So first thing we're going to do is slice along here. That is just very, I have no idea if I'm going to be able to keep it this sharp. But very first thing there, that just feels like it's going through with a much, I don't know if you can really tell from the video, but it's really going through. And it feels very different. The steel feels very different. This bends, feels like it's very flexible. It bends easily. This is a much harder steel, it feels like. This is VG10 steel. There's a thing called the Rockwell Rating, which tells you how hard the metal is. And for the globals, I think they're at around 57, 58. This knife's a 61 Rockwell Rating. So I've got my long slices, and look at that. I don't know if you can tell the difference, but even the sound of it passing through the potato is different. Look at that. Let's just put a few more slices in like that. I could chop with this for absolutely for hours and hours and hours. It just feels, it feels very different. It's, now I've used it a little bit, I'm finding it a little bit too big in a way, but I'm sure I'll get used to that somehow. That's amazing. Okay, well that'll do for potatoes. Let's try the cabbage. Okay, so the thing about a cabbage for me is that it's big. I mean, this one in particular is absolutely massive. Just take that end off. See, holding it at this slightly awkward angle, I went to, let's just very quickly see how much, yeah. Okay, so the challenge here is partly because it's so big and getting through it safely is pretty important. So what I'd normally do is I'd first chop it in half. Now, I'm going to be disadvantaged by the size of this knife here, but we'll have a go. In fact, I should chop it in half using the bigger knife, shouldn't I? So, okay. Right then, let's do some slicing. Yeah, that's okay. How finely can I shred this cabbage? I can feel some resistance as I'm cutting through. And I'm trying to cut it as finely as I can, as though I'm making like a really fine coleslaw or something. It's just sliding off the edge a little bit there. Okay, so what I'm finding is I'm pressing really hard against the cabbage in order to maintain a cutting edge. So let's see if that feels any different here. It does. I mean, you might not be surprised to hear me say that, but it feels completely different to slice with this knife compared with my global knife. Once I get used to the length of it, I think this is going to be an amazing knife to cook with. So what's my review? Well, look at that. Yeah, see? That's all I was doing was drifting the knife through the cabbage. Yeah, so, well, it's super sharp. You'd probably expect it to arrive super sharp. It really is super sharp. I'm expecting this to remain sharper for longer because of the harder steel. It looks beautiful. It's going to look great on the wall with the rest of my collection. I think Ricky's done a fantastic job with it, and I'm delighted to have been able to invest in this knife. Yeah, let's hope I don't get any more of these plasters, And yeah, I recommend it. I'll go check out Ricky's site at perfection.com. Sharpening knives is a lifetime learning experience. If Ricky had sharpened this knife, would it have performed the same? It probably would have done, actually, because he's a great knife sharpener. Would I have been happy with this knife? No, I still wouldn't be happy because the balance is wrong for me. It feels wrong. I can't find a comfortable place to put my hand. So yeah, in the end, I think I made a great decision. I might go back to this knife in a few months' time and see what my thoughts are later. But for now, I recommend the Perfection website, and I recommend this knife for what my recommendations are worth. Oh, this is not a sponsored video. I bought this thing. Ask my wife, I bought this. All right, we'll see you next time on Silicon Valley. Thanks for watching.